Hey, Sam, you come up with that intro line?
You didn't tell me that was today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Writers Room with Sam and Jim. This is the show where we bring aspiring writers into our little writers' room here to help them work on and develop their story. We're going to do that with Stephen Saltarelli in just a little bit. But first, Sam wants to go off about something. Sam, what you got?
All right, Jim. I don't often get to tell you stories you've never heard before.
Never. For about 15 years.
That's not true. Every now and again, you'll come up with one. I'll come up with one and be like, I never heard that. Half the time it's because I forgot that ever happened to me, and I'm running into someone who reminds me of something.
Right.
But in this case, this is a story I think you have heard. We haven't talked about a lot. JR, you haven't heard it, which is when we had a podcast before podcasting was cool. And I remember in that podcast, one night, I was at a low point. I had a baby and a part-time teacher wife, and I was in my house, and I wasn't making any money, and I wanted to come out to my garage where we did our podcast and just turn it on and do this 1 a.m., 2 a.m. monologue, which we had never done anything like that before, and then talk about this thing. And I really wish I had. It's one of my regrets. But what I was going to say was that we're all suckers. We all fall in love with this Horatio Alger dream that is specific to our business, which is we're going to come out and we're going to suffer and pay dues, and then eventually the gates will open and we're going to go in there and it's going to be a whole new experience. And what
it's because I think it's because that's how it works in the movies.
Right.
There's something about chasing being in movies and then actually watching movie stories where people go out and because they're good and because they did the right thing, they make it in.
That's right. And the problem is you come out and first of all, it doesn't work that way 99% of the time. And the struggle is real. And for a lot of people, it doesn't work. And then they end up going to do something else. And I wish people will be honest about that and then not look at the idea that it didn't work and then they go do something else as a pure failure, because it's not. I've tried a lot of things that didn't stick for whatever particular reason, and things happen. I mean, hell, our restaurants went out of business in 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a certain amount of failure in life. But that's not my point. That I don't want to talk about, you come out here and it won't work. What I was upset about was that the dream was corrupted with this fable that is sold in movies and television. Because the dream isn't really that the gates open and then everything becomes easy and you get all this money and everything's fantastic and you write an Academy Award winning or Emmy Award winning show. That's not the way it works. And I remember once we sold a feature, and the way we sold it was our then manager was having lunch with an executive, and he said, two of my clients have this idea, and the guy loved it. And basically, the manager sold the idea, and you said, I wish he hadn't sold it. I would have wished we would have sold it. And I was like, dude, at our level, that's how stuff happens. And it worked. This is a normal way.
It's true.
But because you had an idea of how it was going to be a success. And I wish that I could go back to myself on that night at 2 a.m. when I was laying in bed sweating about how am I going to make this work. And I had said to myself, you are making this work. It's happening right now by sticking it out. And it's not going to happen that you're going to get that magic text on your phone tomorrow, or that your script that is going to be handed to somebody and everything's going to change and you're going to get called up to the majors. It's going to be incremental growth. I'm going to get to be a better writer tomorrow because I'm going to keep writing. I just have to stick it out. And if I do decide not to stick it out, it's not because I'm weak. It's not because I give up. It's because my priorities changed, and it's my life, and that's the way it works. And this whole confection that has come up, which I now realize it's poison, because if your trajectory is not that, then who are you, and are you ever a success? And that's the thing that was weighing me down at 2 a.m. And that's the message that I wish I could go back and tell that guy. So I'm telling you, and by you I mean Jim, but I also mean anybody who's listening to it, there's no one version, and there's no best way, and there's no one path. It is what we make of it. There's no failure or success. It's just how we feel about it. And whether we can control that or not, well, that's why we have best friends and wives and husbands and whiskey and whatever else we need to process it all. But don't believe the lie. Just believe in what we're actually doing.
Amen, brother. Okay, let's get into this week's show. Hi, Stephen. This is Jim. Welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here. Thank you guys. I've been listening a lot, and it's really awesome what you guys are doing.
Thanks, man. We just do it purely for ego. It has nothing to do with trying to help people, even though we tried to hide behind that and redeem some of our earlier sins.
That's all that matters. I mean, you just got to get that medium to low level self-promotion, and the rest just follows.
Also, it's great to be talking to people who are still are hungry, you know, and really love it. And then, because sometimes, you know, this is for real. Sometimes you can get a little cranky about stuff that would never, ever have made you cranky in the past. Or something really cool happens, and because you've built up calluses, it takes so much to get through them. That then, you know, you talk to people who, you know, are trying to get a gig.
You got to do what?
Yeah. And you had to finish a draft in a weekend? That's so cool. Stop complaining. And so thank you for talking to us.
Please stop complaining. Absolutely.
Now, Stephen, JR always gives us this little cheat sheet. And I got to tell you, out of all the podcasts we've done, you are the most on paper ready to be a TV writer in terms of everything that you have done in your life.
Wow, that's the high bar. Thank you, I guess. I don't know if that's good or bad.
No, that's great. And I want to talk about what you've done. First of all, just
sure.
to come in the past, I'm just going to list a couple things. But you were a white-collar criminal defense lawyer in Washington, D.C., which is not only should be a show, but I think has been a show.
I think it's about to be a show later this summer.
But it's been a show, so that's great. And you helped a CEO write a book about a trial that he helped win, that you helped. Oh, that's so much material right there.
I know it.
The only thing I don't understand is the bout of mental illness that you clearly experienced that caused you to move to Los Angeles to start to be a writer.
Yeah, for sure. No, my parents are still asking about that.
You got tired of making money?
It's just, you know, the thing is when you're a lawyer, like you have to track all of your time by the 10th of the hour. So like if I call you guys for 12 minutes, I have to say, you know, it's called Sam and Jim and what we talked about. And that device kind of gets to you. And so while those hours are racking up, I was thinking about like the scripts that I could be writing and stuff. So I was still writing while I was at the firm. I was just going home and trying to knock out a page or two when I got home. But I don't know, the bug got me, I guess. So here I am. I used the book to kind of escape from the law firm. And now I'm out here in LA. It's great.
When you left, when you put in your notice, did they react to what you were doing?
Yeah. I mean, I had to at a law firm, you have 6 to 9 bosses. So I had to kind of do a tour and go around to all these people who are very well established and comfortable and explain to them, you know, I'm going to go move across the country and try not to make money for a little bit, you know, try to write some cool stories.
The idea of being you and becoming what you are at your stage in life makes me terrified and afraid and bored all at the same time. And I need to run away now.
I mean, that's what you were saying.
Something like that.
All right. So first of all, when you are, you know, you've got your writer brain, obviously, because you have it. As soon as you decide this is what you want to do, you have it, I think. When you were defending these people, were you kind of looking at them as characters in your mind? Like, were you fictionalizing them too? Or were you thinking, oh, I got to use that. A little bit. Yeah, I mean, you definitely meet. I think I heard you guys talking about how you met so many characters when you guys were working at the restaurants. And I think the same thing happens with legal cases. I mean, everyone is a story. The specific type of law that I was practicing, we were doing internal investigations. Basically, like a company would have the government coming after them, and they'd be like, oh, well, how bad is it? Hire a bunch of lawyers to come in, interview everybody, read everybody's emails, and then you kind of piece together the story.
You have to find all the evidence so you can bury it before the government comes and gets it.
Right. Yeah. You just have to figure out exactly how big you need the fire to be that you're going to burn everything.
Wow. I mean, that's
great.
Takes some math. And you're finding people, by the way, white collar people who are being jammed up. I mean, they are being caught, or by you, caught up and saying, this was wrong what you did. And these are people that are not used to being called out like this. Does this scare the shit out of them, or what's the reaction that comes out of that?
Yeah. I mean, it's always like internal investigations. People get called in. It's always full crisis mode. So, people are giving high pressure interviews, and you know they're not used to having people asking them tough questions or reading every email they've ever sent.
I mean, I know some of them get angry. Do any of them cry? Do any of them just fall apart?
You know, people hold up pretty well, I think, for the most part.
That's not as good of a story, man. You might want to change that.
They will when you write the page.
I know they'll be peeing in the seat and calling for their mommy. I think we all remember a great line in The Sopranos, which was when the guy that shot the nephew, Michael Imperioli's character, Tony Soprano, catches him with his best friend. I can't remember who, maybe Sal, and and then they shoot this guy, and the guy who's a tough mob guy, young guy, but he's a tough mob guy. He actually calls for his mommy as he's about to get shot, and it was such a beautiful line. So, Stephen, you got to fix this. Let's fix this when you get there. All right, so to keep going, we should get into your story because it's really interesting, and it's actually based on something in your life, which I think is gold and also really tricky because you can get held up on stuff. Which
Right.
Jim and I have been there. So let's hear about it. Tell us about your story.
Yeah, totally. I've taken out projects in 2018, took out projects to all the big networks, and sat in front of the rooms of like 7 executives and pitched them these stories. And the first thing you have to do is the personal part. And I was up there, trying to pitch like a Doogie Howser at law type situation, and I'm trying to like relate it to it's always a deeply like ridiculous thing to try to like force a personal connection to just a story that you thought was kind of good. So
deeply ridiculous. Just
Yes.
so we're clear, we've gone off on this before, I think, on this podcast, but it is, it's not that there shouldn't be a personal connection or that even that it's a plus, but the idea that everyone needs to come into a connection about everything in order to write it, then it devalues the actual people who do have connections instead of all the rest of us bullshit artists that are like, yeah, I'm connected to that in some way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So this is my story that I have the personal connection to that I don't necessarily have to bullshit. So my mom was adopted a couple years ago. I got her a test kit to test her DNA and 23andMe, whatever. And she got it back, and it turns out that her father, her biological father, is like this serial inventor. He's like the king of like tchotchke. He's invented like very like some very goofy carnival style headwear that I think everyone has worn at some point in time. And he made like $15 million on this back in the 80s. And he just happens to have the exact same name, same first and middle name, which is really kind of an odd coincidence. But he never met her.
That's kind of spooky almost.
Yeah, it is a little spooky. And she kind of started reaching out to her relatives, and now we're about to meet him. But so anyway, this story, the log line is: at the wish of his dying mother, an uptight patent lawyer escorts his deadbeat serial inventor grandpa on an epic cross-country road trip to meet her. So it's kind of like the non-cartoon version of Rick and Morty, I guess. We have like the uptight kid, and we have the eccentric grandpa.
You can't go wrong with eccentric grandpa.
Yeah. That's it's
really
kind of an
good.
aspiration of mine someday.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
this is a half hour.
Yeah, half hour. I think it's like a dramedy.
Right.
Probably a comedy, but comedy with some heart, hopefully.
Well, I mean, it's a great idea because, you've done all the basics. Can we just talk about Jim, what he's done right here to us anyway?
It's a great core idea, right? I haven't seen it, right? I haven't run into tchotchke inventors much, and you're living in family drama, so you got a lot to go with right there. They don't know each other. You're putting them in a car, so they're forced to be together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of great.
Well, and also you've got you put the grandfather and the grandson. They're temperamentally different, so that'll give you the comedy thing. I'd like to hear about is why does the kid, and I assume the kid is not that much of a kid. I mean, he's a lawyer, but he's the younger one.
Right.
Why does he not want to go on this road trip?
The character design of the kid is that his father ran away with some woman at some point and then passed away shortly afterward. And so he's kind of grown up with his mom. He was like fiercely protective of his mom, who was like a little bit more naive. So he's kind of had to be like the protector role.
Yeah, sure.
And now, so in the pilot, we're kind of going to open on the DNA test. So like we go from the swab to like it going in the mail to it like shaking in the test tube, all the way back to the mom, who we then see is like attached to a bag. She's getting chemotherapy.
Oh my
so
God.
She's going to call the kid and say, I just found, I have a family. I have a dad. I have a sister. I have all these people. And she wants him to go visit the dad.
So he
Sometime
can't say
during
no. Hold on, Paul. Sorry to interrupt you, but he can't. The woman has chemotherapy. I want you to do this for me, and this is what I need.
It's almost like a living will. She is bequeathing her son the family she never knew she had, and how does he say no to that? Because she's dying.
Exactly.
That's what's so good about this.
The way that I'm setting it up is that he doesn't actually know that she's in chemotherapy. So sometime during this call, she's going to accidentally press like the FaceTime button, and he'll see that she's in a hospital. Mom, what are you doing in a hospital? What is that bag attached to you? Like, she's just downplaying it. She just only wants to talk about the grandfather. Like, can you believe you have the same name? And it's just a light cancer, that sort of thing.
It's not the bad kind. That's beautiful. I mean, you've got such pathos there. And, of course, the kid, is he selfish? Is he kind of a Joel Fleischman type, or is he, that's going back, what's he like now?
Yeah, so I totally missed the reference. but he's like,
All right,
he's
I'm
kind
so
of
sorry,
played
Stephen.
everything.
Thank you for coming on our show today. That's a little show called Northern Exposure. Go ahead.
He's played everything like extremely cautiously. He's like never done anything in his life. He's just been chained to this desk. He took the patent bar. He hasn't gotten out and lived life, which is kind of the opposite of the grandfather. But sorry, just kind of circle around to the earlier thing. The reason that he really has that he would be opposed to doing this is that he's grown up as the protector, and his feeling is like, screw this guy. Like, he hasn't been here. He wasn't here when Dad died or when Dad left. He just hasn't been here. Like, he's not a real person. Like, we don't need him. That's kind of his initial take.
And actually, if he's kind of an organized guy, right, and he's
Right.
chained to his desk, and first of all, he's a patent lawyer. I mean, it's not criminal defense, not a prosecutor. It's not even like,
It's object law.
it's just very intellectual pieces of paper. And now his entire world just got blown up in the space of one phone call, which is great
For sure.
television.
Let me ask you a question, Stephen, because I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, what does an episode look like as it goes forward on this extended road trip? And so to get to that point, I'm looking for the flip side of Sam's question, which is, what's the grandfather's personality like?
He's the kind of guy who is just okay to cut ties with everything and just move on to the next idea. He's very much living in the moment. He's like the exact opposite. So he's like been divorced 5 times. There's always another toy. There's always another invention. And like his first one was really successful. Every other one has been super unsuccessful, and including that pancake thing that like electrocuted people. And so after the kind of the lawsuit settled for that, he's kind of broke and he's living out in the middle of a desert. And like he's basically burned all of his bridges at this point.
I got to say, I really like the idea. Like, it resonates very deeply for me. The idea of a guy who craves novelty as an inventor, right? Like,
Right.
he's always looking for new things, so he makes new things. Like that's clean.
And that's so beautiful. He's going to do that. They're going to be sitting in a diner, and he's going to be trying to figure stuff out. And it's going to drive the other guy crazy, the grandson crazy.
Stephen, when I read your description, I had a cousin on my wife's side who was an inventor, and he invented all kinds of stuff. Like, he invented a kite you could fly indoors, which was cool. It worked off of Tesla, like a charge thing, that electrostatic and whatever, but it would keep the kite up. But no one would make the kite because it had to have like 300,000 volts in it. There was no amps. Like, it was perfectly
Electric
safe.
kite.
Right, but kids, no one was like, no, we're not giving kids a kite with a whole bunch of electricity in it. And so that was the end of that idea.
That one might be a winner. I don't know.
So, Stephen, all right, so back to, writing. Thank you for that story, Jim.
Well, I was just saying, like, because it's that idea. You're in the coffee shop, right? The things it's the electric pancake thing. Like,
Right.
There's so many that you can come up with such crazy ideas, and they might actually almost make sense.
But they don't. Right, and that could be a lot of fun. So my question is, what do you need help with in this idea?
Yeah, so kind of wondering about the episode to episode engine as we get past. I think the pilot kind of makes sense. These guys will meet and they'll kind of go off on the journey. Kind of wondering about the larger episodic engine as we go through the first season, and whether or not. So basically, here's what I'm imagining. The grandpa character, he has like this book that has like every contract he's ever signed, every invention, the patent for every invention he's ever done. He knows he's got like this map to his own past.
Right.
The kid, who is a patent attorney, they'll basically like form a business basically where they're going to go back into this guy's past and try to like capitalize on these assets, like the way that like Amazon is trying to go in and get MGM's IP like from the past. So like in an episode, they might go and meet some guy who screwed him out of a deal, or they find somebody that infringed upon a patent, or he's got like 1,000 tchotchkes in some storage locker out in Utah or something,
Totally, and I can see how those work. So just to lay it out right now, the road trip idea is really cool, and the tableau, the way it looks is great. But there's a reason why there aren't a lot of those, if any. Really, you think, oh, it's production, we need to have sound stages, and I always say, who cares about the money? We'll figure that out later. But the thing that's missing is it's hard to have regular characters, and you want to build, as what we have, what JR put together that you said to him is in the process, this guy's going to find the family that he never knew he needed, which is a great line. But he's got to find that family, and it's got to be, we don't want to have him just go from point A to point B with adventures along the way. We want him to find that family in this story. And so you're building it already in a challenging way. This is not to say a bad way, because there are ways to get around that. Well, I've been watching Hacks on HBO. I don't know if you caught that yet, with Jean Smart as a comedian. I don't remember the name of the other actress that's with her, but the actress from LA moves to Vegas, and so she still has a life long distance in LA, but now she's making friends and developing a family, and she's becoming part of Jean Smart's world. And then you get to use those characters every week, and you're going to want them.
The thing, and I thought maybe this is where Sam was going, because as I was listening to your story, I was thinking, well, the products are kind of dead, and the people that he maybe had some conflict with in the past isn't all that interesting, but the idea that, like, just like he created new toys, he created new families, the idea that there's other kids out there that he fathered, or even that, the family that he had along the way, if he was married 5 times, there's kids scattered from coast to coast. And so along the way, they're stopping at each of these different families that are almost versions of the family that the kid in the story, the main character, could have been part of.
That's great.
And he maybe kind of is in a way, because he's sort of related to any of them through the guy. But just something where we're going through human parts of the story, and there's even, in the more comedic version of this, you wind up picking one person at each of these stops.
Right.
Depending on how many episodes you have. And you could wind up with, like, trading in their stuff and driving a Winnebago or a bus. It's got, like, all these different family members that they're going, because I don't know what the goal at the end of the thing is. I don't know if this guy's promised he's going to share his inheritance with all of them now because he doesn't care anymore and he thinks he's going to die. And now the patent attorney's trying to find all the available money so it can be shared out to everyone.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I love that idea. And I was thinking kind of along the lines of Little Miss Sunshine. What if they just picked up one family member at each stop,
Right.
And I think that could be a really fun way to take it from, basically a two-hander at the beginning to more of an ensemble piece as we go along.
And you'd have to, because it's all about the pilot, right? You'd have to get that first pickup is not the grandfather, probably.
Right. Like halfway through, you need to pick up the second
person in the pilot, right?
That shakes up whatever that original chemistry is. You put in a new element.
Yeah, so you get the idea of what the show will be. And then
Also,
if you know where you're going, if you know, let's say there's 10 episodes in the season, if we know that at the end of the season we're going to drop the lawsuit on the doorstep of the big bad corporation that screwed him, what I would hope is that he probably couldn't have accomplished that if he hadn't picked up all those people along the way.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In some way. It doesn't mean like each one had one piece of the password. It's not that, but one of them motivates him. One of him makes him a better lawyer. It sounds trite the way I'm saying it, maybe because it is trite, or maybe it's just I could be either way. But the idea being, it all comes together. There's a rhyme to it. And when you're pitching it, when you have the pilot and somebody calls you in, it's like, I really liked your pilot. Where's it go? And you say, well, it goes like this. And the whole thing is of a piece and it makes sense emotionally. That's gold. That's the stuff. That's the other drug that Hollywood lives on. Everything's intentional, has an emotional goal. So, your emotional connection to the piece is the one piece, and then the actual, that it all hangs together and goes to someplace that has meaning and is also exciting in the first season. And then they'll buy season 2 and 3 down the road, but then they say, oh my God, this all makes sense.
Yeah, that does all make sense. That sounds like a great model for kind of structuring the season.
Great. Let's throw that one out and do a different one, because that was Jim's model. So I just want to go back to, I'm saying that's the good way to go on the road.
Can I put one more little thing on that?
Yeah.
Potentially the end of that is bringing the guy to the kid's mom.
Exactly. That's where.
Or in some way, some wish fulfillment fantasy with her cancer and his money and what the kid can do with the patents and something. The rest of the families that have shown up, the family members, whatever they are, like, it feels like there's something in there that could be a pot of gold at the end of season 1.
Right. Well, the pot of gold could be they file the thing and it gets rejected, but
they have family.
There's the mother in chemotherapy surrounded by all this family that she didn't know she had.
Right.
And that's the biggest gift he could have given her.
Right. That cuts the treacle out of it. I like that.
I was about to say we just did a big injection of treacle right into it.
Well, I'm saying because they lose the money, right? They don't get the money, which is what you kind of think, but you get the emotion instead.
Right. But not so closed off that we can't come back for season.
Right.
There's like hope for season 2.
There's an appeal.
Yeah. Or no, then one of them says, but wait, I've got the Singer envelope that's going to completely hose them.
Right.
Or whatever it is. But yeah. That's the money. That, to me, that's the kind of stuff that in a room everyone goes, oh yeah, that's it.
So instead of succession, this is invention.
That's right.
I'd love that.
Yeah. Steven, we hijacked your idea. Just want to check in before I then come back to a different thing.
No, I think you guys are on the right track, and I think that was kind of what I was thinking in my mind as well. I'm kind of used to when trying to draw up an engine for an episode that it would be kind of thinking about all the characters, the entire cast as one. I think bring them in one at a time. I think it could be really fun.
The engine idea, when everyone's looking for an engine, I think obviously story engines are essential, right? And they're not as easy as everyone thinks. Once you step out of legal, medicine, cops, it's hard. Or even, miniseries. We were talking about Band of Brothers earlier today. In that one, even this is the story of people going from A to B, from training in the South to Berlin and wherever they ended up.
Bavaria,
Bavaria at the end of the war in Europe. So all that the engine for this thing is it's something that regularly gets in the way of the guy's need, right?
Right.
It just has to be regular. And that's the challenge when it's not, it's a cop. So what's getting in the way? Crime. So that's easy. What's the doctor? Illness. But you have the legal thing, and we've talked almost nothing about the legal thing. Is that intentional?
Oh, yeah. Who wants to talk about the legal thing? I mean, I think
those shows are never successful. Nobody ever watches legal shows. Yeah.
It's true. David E. Kelly sells the legal shows, and the rest of us. I think the legal thing. So I think along the way, there's either going to be like an obstacle or an opportunity. There could be like an obstacle in the way of their like road trip. Like the car breaks down, most easy version of that. Or there can be like an opportunity. So I think that like Grandpa is always looking for a hustle. Right. So if he sees something, the kid is just kind of corralling him, but you can't really stop the force that is Grandpa Billy. His novelty retractable nose, the bungee nose, did 15 million in the 80s. Like, you can't stop that sort of intensity.
No, you can't change him.
So I think that's kind of how we deviate from our normal path. And I think that either going with the obstacle or the opportunity or both each episode is the basic engine.
So there's another way to go about the family thing, even keeping that, which is, where's the set, by the way? Where's he from? Where's his mother?
I'm thinking mom's on the East Coast around Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're starting. So I don't know if you guys have ever driven out to Vegas from LA, but sometimes if traffic is really bad going immediately east, they'll send you up through like the high desert, which is an outrageous place. It's basically like, I'm not sure they have like running water. So it's just like extremely dusty, just trailers, no like address, street signs or anything. So I think that's where Grandpa is when we start this. And I think they gotta get across the country.
Well, because the other way to do it that's not a road trip is wherever they are, Grandpa, he goes to Grandpa, and then Grandpa's people are all within an hour of that house. So it's not, or it doesn't have to be a road trip to have the feeling that they are putting together all these pieces to help Grandpa, if that helps you at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you want to avoid the road trip. That was one of the things I was wondering about is like, you don't really see a lot of road trip shows, right? It's such a time-honored like feature device.
It's production challenging.
Yeah, you can't. It's really hard to make. Yeah, you're not using the same set twice necessarily, except for inside the RV.
Which is how you can kind of make it work. The other thing I'm thinking about the chemistry of your characters. The basic version of what you've got going is the too strict or too uptight patent lawyer and the too freewheeling Grandpa, and it feels like there's some amount of ongoing tension between the kid looking through the papers, going, "You didn't get a complete patent on this because you never filed the form, whatever."
Right.
And those flaws, and meanwhile, the Grandpa's teaching the kid the value of doing something by the seat of his pants. That feels like the fundamental engine between the two of them.
That's the conflict, certainly, and the approach to life.
Right. And so that's where they're both learning something or picking up some value from spending this time together.
Yeah, and the clock in here is, first, obviously, it's the mother getting sicker, but also he wants, what's the grandson's name?
They're both named Billy, so I got like Billy the kid.
You just want to make this as hard as possible. Okay, fine, Steve. So Billy the lawyer, he wants to get this done so he can be rid of this, so that he can be onto his mother and back to his life. So he's pushing the other direction, and I think that's great. And if you put in a ticking clock, like the bad version is the case has to be filed by this time. Anything you can do with pressure will help. And it's probably the number one note that network executives like to give is what's the clock? Why now and what's the clock? But they're not wrong that a clock helps. And we tend to fight it because it's so artificial, but it does help almost all the time.
And it's where this question of the interpersonal chemistry between the two of them needs to impede them reaching that goal, right? Like, it's got to be the obstacle that every day they just can't, the grandpa's never in the car when the guy comes back out. Like
Right.
whatever that is, because I'm just trying to think of that. As you say, it's the engine from episode to episode, and there's a lot of different pieces of engine here, right? It's finding different people, it's looking into different patents, it's whatever. Like there's those things we've been talking about, but the real engine, it feels like, has to be the growth process or the change process of these two banging off of each other. Whether or not there's other people in the car yet, and how they affect that process and what they're valuing and why they're valuing it. It really does feel more like a feature to me in a lot of ways.
Or no, 10 episodes. It's a mini kind
It
of.
could be a mini. It feels, just in the nature of what you've got here, it feels more like a closed-ended story, unless you then flip it into something completely new at the end of season 1.
Piece
like
of cake.
some really big turn.
Yeah. Or now, the whole season, first season 1 was about him trying to get away from the family. And season 2 is him using this new family. And so it's just a slight pivot. So before Jim talks you into making a closed-ended limited series, I don't think it has to be necessarily.
Okay.
Right? In fact, I'm kind of wondering why we're having this call, because this show sounds great and already figured out. And I don't think we've told you a single new idea. I think you're just patiently nodding along as your grandfather explains to you how the internet works.
He's going down his lawyerly checklist going, okay, they talked about that idea, that idea, that idea, that idea.
What about title? What can?
That's what you need. The title.
Can we play with the title?
The least
title is
important
terrible.
thing. What's your title?
Well, do you guys think it's not an important thing when you guys are pitching?
When you're pitching,
We always have one.
we always have one, but we never try to find the most perfect title ever. It's hard. Titles are really hard.
And they almost always change.
We worked on a show, Stephen, that was a high-budget network show with Julien Anderson and Dermot Mulroney and Rand Ravitch and Far Chariot, executive producers, all very talented people on NBC, and the title was Crisis. That was the best they could come up with.
That's because the network president named it that at a certain point. He was like, how about this?
I know, I get that's how it happened, but the show is named Conflict. It's named,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's like, what? I mean, that's the
Credit.
most generic name possible, and they can't, because titles are hard. They are.
Well, and that was my point, is that you can name it whatever you want to, but then if it actually goes somewhere, anyone on Earth might come up with, I think it should be named this. I'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's name it that.
It's true, except they didn't have a great title before that, so it was a tough show to name. I wonder if this one is too. You have Huckster Grandpa is your.
I've already ditched that one.
Yeah, but that's a good. That's
It's descriptive.
it's
Okay.
it's a terrible name, but there's no but
But no, I mean, for like pitching and selling, like it tells someone looking at the log line sees Huckster Grandpa. They already have a bunch of images of what the show is going to be about.
do you have something? I mean, the reason I was saying it's okay if it's terrible is it says what it is, and now you can try to figure out better versions of it. But we never get attached to anything. What's the title you got now?
Gramps, but the S is a dollar sign.
Oh.
Didn't land.
No. I mean, here's the.
Didn't land.
I'm not laughing at your title, by the way. I'm laughing at how hard these things are, and they're impossible.
Yeah, that's
Jim and
right.
I have spent hours pitching things, and it always comes
Oh my
back to
God.
the basic, not clever, on the nose version.
Exactly.
Always, it just comes back to that.
With Haven, It's funny. Haven was like one of the original 2 or 3 names it came up with. It then went through a list about another 120 names before we came back to that.
Well, it was Sanctuary.
For a long time.
And the only reason we had to change it was another show named Sanctuary came out.
I don't think that was the only reason, though. I think people liked the idea of Haven is a softer word than Sanctuary.
But like anything else, arbitrary. And so are you going to try to pitch this, or are you going to try to write this? That's my question.
No, I think I'm going to write it. But a lot of the times people are talking about, even when you're pitching stuff, some people have the script in their back pocket. I think as a writer who hasn't sold anything, I think you got to write it. It's pretty hard to get somebody to pay you to write something when you haven't.
Do you have a sample that's appropriate for the show?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, the strategy, of course, is you find a more senior, more experienced producer, and then they guarantee the script, and then you don't have to write it. But the thing is, this is such a good idea that it's a great sample for you.
Yeah.
So it could be really cool. So you end up with a sample because probably, I hate to say it out loud, but probably it won't sell, just statistically. right? So at least then you don't just have a beautiful pitch, you have a beautiful pitch and a script that's really good, and that can get you a job on something else. And these days, the line blurring between hour comedy, drama, this kind of script, I feel like it could be for way more shows than it normally could.
Well, I was just thinking that on a title page, you can't put Gramps as a $sign.
And that's what you were thinking about while we were talking about? You're spacing out while I was in. That's right. Stephen, he wasn't listening to you either, just so we're clear. It's not just me.
I was answering the question Sam was posing, which is, because if you actually are writing it, then the title, you can have more fun with titles. Where I was thinking about titles is for a pitch and for log lines passing across executives' desks, going through agencies, that kind of stuff. The easier it is to look at a title and have some idea what the show is about, I think that's actually good for you usually, because it gives people, they can remember what it is. These people are looking at a dozen different ideas a day, which is where Huckster Grandpa, I don't think is great, but you do know what the show is.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely helpful to know.
So what's your next step? So you're going to sit down, you're going to write this, you're going to break it out into acts, and you're going to try to figure out. So have you figured out where you want to end the first episode, where you want to end the pilot?
My initial thought to ending the pilot was that if we're filling up this Winnebago, the first person to get on board would be Grandpa. We kind of meet him. He's in his element. Our guy goes out there, pretends like his car is broken, tries to get Grandpa to fix his car. Grandpa starts hustling him for money. Then at some point, it's revealed the relationship between them. They have a big falling out, or they have a big argument. And while this is happening, some other scam that Grandpa's been running along the whole time kind of comes to a head, and they have to escape because some guy's at the door of the trailer with a shotgun, bad version. And so they're kind of like, they abscond and off they are away, like the wind blowing their hairs.
Right. But are we ending the pilot there?
I was thinking that we would end the pilot there, maybe like a tag after that.
Because I'm wondering if we were, that's going to be short right now. It doesn't have to be. But there's not a lot of, I'm not saying the emotional turns are, life is regular. Oh my God, my mother's dying. It's so terrible. He goes to see her and she has one request, that she found out this thing, and then he has no choice but to do it. He goes and hooks up with Grandpa. Shit goes crazy. And now he's stuck with Grandpa and they're on the run together, right? That's basically the structure, right?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Right. And so
it depends on what they're fighting about that they fall apart, right? I mean, does the kid explain about the mom?
The fight is basically that Grandpa, at first Grandpa's trying to hustle him, right? He's trying to take out plugs in his engine and stuff just to make sure that, he could do some more work on his car or whatever. But at a certain point, he figures out that this kid is actually his grandson, in part by, like, he's got an old photo of himself around, and it just very much looks like him. And he figures out that the kid is actually he thinks the kid is trying to hustle him. The kid is here for their money. So the argument that occurs is basically like, you're just here for my money. Like, that's why, I never reached out to you. Like, Grandpa basically has a very negative idea of family.
That's a good thing to know.
All right. I want to tell you what I think is so cool about that. I don't know. I'm hoping it was intentional, and you'll tell me, but the idea that the kid is basically testing the grandfather, the money, right. The line that could come from the grandfather is, you pretend like you're all straight and narrow, patent lawyer, boring guy, but it takes a hustler to know a hustler. And you've been hustling me the whole time. And that's that revelation that we have as an audience, and that maybe
the apple didn't fall so far from the tree.
Right. And then what we're starting to get a taste is that these guys are a little more similar than Billy the lawyer would care.
But neither of them wants to admit that.
Or maybe the grandfather, that doesn't bother him, but the kid doesn't want it. I mean, that's the hard part, right?
Pick him.
Yeah. Because Grandpa's a little more worldly, and he's not as judgy. He's just wackadoo. and he's cutting corners, but he's more self-possessed. He's comfortable in his skin, which is not
right.
But he's more honest to himself about what he is. Maybe not about his ideas. Maybe he's chasing this thing and he's not being honest about that. But he doesn't pretend to be something that he's not. Whereas Billy the lawyer is like, no, I'm Mr. Responsibility, and the answer is you're Mr. Responsibility because you were raised a certain way. But the fact is that in your soul,
you put up a lot of walls around whoever it is that you really are inside of there.
Yeah, that would be a big revelation for the pilot. Possibly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm trying to go, and I think that the line you pitched is definitely a great example of that.
Okay, so once again, I pitched you exactly what you already have.
No. I had the idea underlying it, but I didn't have quite that turn, which I think will be key, because that scene basically has to work, or else the pilot falls apart, right?
Well, and I think too, this is diving down into, because there's only a pilot, right? The rest doesn't matter. But the energy of the entire series is really going to be about the character turns between these two. you're going to have to really know these characters well, so that as you're banging them off of each other, and they're each getting pissed off and turned off, or hesitantly or reluctantly admiring of the other, whatever it is, that's going to keep building, and that's going to be, it's a challenge. It's a lot.
But that's a lot. But that's a good. I think that's an attainable goal.
But I think that's the real engine of the show.
Right.
Is that chemistry between the two of them.
Here, Stephen, if I can pitch to you a pitch for this show.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So you're sitting there. You got your 7 people who, you walk into the room and everybody pretends to be such good friends, and like, hey, we're just here pitching a show, even though your livelihood now depends on the next 28 minutes. And, some of them are already sorry that they had that thing for lunch, and everybody's thinking about 900 things, and you've got to get their attention. And it's an enormous amount of pressure, and I never wear a shirt that shows sweat rings when I pitch, if I can help it.
Very smart.
But and that's why I think hoodies are so popular in pitches for writers. You can do anything you want under hoodie, no one knows. So I think the start could be, I'm a liar, right? My name is Stephen Saltarelli, and I've helped white collar criminals lie to everybody. I helped a CEO write a book where he lied about his life. And the thing is, I want you all to know that everyone in this room is a liar, because we're either lying to ourselves or we're lying to other people, usually both. And this is a story about one character that lies to everybody and one character that lies to himself.
Ooh.
Right? What grade of bullshit is that? Right? That's pretty good, right?
I think my lawn just got greener.
But it's just about breaking it down and getting their attention at the beginning of the pitch.
For sure.
Right. And the thing is, that's only kind of right for what your show is.
But it's definitely in the neighborhood. Like, that's a great contrast. That's
right.
Great up and down.
Because you're using what you are, but you're not saying, oh, yeah, I'm a lawyer. Because, by the way, in Hollywood, there's plenty of lawyers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There's plenty of people who went to law school and then woke up, 3 years after graduating going, what did I just do? And then they go do other things. Now, I'm not saying that what you did, but there's a lot of, there's some doctors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of different things. But the guts of it is basically kind of insulting, which is what you did, but it's also faux opening a vein, as our friend Matt McGinnis would say. That's sort of like really bearing your soul a little bit.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is, it's kind of like crying on a date so that the girl will sleep with you. It's completely manipulative bullshit, but it has to be true. But that's what sales is. It's that idea of, that's the connection, I think, that you have to make in the beginning, right?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, these execs are just bouncing between room and room, pitch to pitch, and it's like, it's got to be hard for them. And I think that's kind of why they're attracted to the personal story, right? Because I'm not just throwing story at you. I'm just telling you about myself.
Yeah, and I think people get really connected. And when when people come in or talk to us about plot, it's really hard to track. When people are talking plot. But as soon as they start with a character and they start with that, then for some reason we all connect, and you're the first character that you're going to talk about. So if they connect to you in that way, then they'll start connecting. And then the thing is, with the grandfather, who is basically creating all these toys, and he's always selling. And selling has a certain amount of lying, like I'm proposing that you do at the beginning of this pitch.
Sure.
And the question is, what is he lying about? What's he really lying about? Why is he lying? By the way, biggest lie in the world was, abandoning this daughter, right?
Yeah.
And then never reaching out to her. I mean, not really a lie, but certainly not confronting what he has done. What is he running from, right? And that I think is really interesting. Why is he lying? As opposed to, why is Billy the lawyer kid lying?
Yeah, I think that's a much more interesting question.
It's a framing question.
It's a nice lens to look at it through. And your title of the script in that case could just be liars, or a bus full of liars, or a family of liars, or whatever. But it kind of brands the whole idea, and it might focus what you're trying to do.
This is how we kind of talk about, this is the kind of conversations that we talk about that is a lot of like just getting around it and trying to find the core of it. But now the title could be Grandpa's a fucking liar. And that could literally, by the way, that could literally be the title. It is what it is. But you could put that on the script. No one's going to think you're going to write that.
Right.
But people will read the script.
Right.
Because that's an eye-grabbing, interesting title.
And it goes to the core. And when you're coming in and talking about it, it's pathos. It's real. Because the comedy is going to come out of what you're going to have a couple set pieces. You're going to get this idea. And the comedy is easier to sell, I think, in a lot of ways than the drama. because the drama really hooks them, and then the comedy works against that. Is any of that? I feel like that's 27% bullshit, but maybe 73 pretty good. What do you think, John?
Or vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa. Yeah. So that I just wanted to go into the pitch, because if you can't find a title, then I think you haven't quite figured out what it's about. And the struggle with titles is always to find a clever one. But if you can't even find a basic one, then I think that's a sign that there's of a deeper problem. Because you should be able to come up with a boring one, right? Easy.
Yeah, sure.
But if you can't, then it's like, well, maybe I don't quite have it dialed in. I just got to tune it just a little bit more.
And it's one thing where the pitching process itself can help, right? Because you then have to find a title, and you then have to find, as Sam was doing, like what's your lever that you're using to try and lift up people's the top of their brains so they'll actually ingest what you're saying, right?
What really sucks here is I think we're making an argument for pitching.
I know.
That it actually helps instead of being this onerous.
It makes you distill your thoughts about what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. It's like brand people sitting around a room, sitting there throwing all those crazy words at each other. In the beginning of the conversation, they could be talking about a car or they can be talking about orange juice. You have no idea. They both make me feel so happy. But by the end, hopefully, they got to, you know what I mean? They got to the core of it sometimes if they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think these things are a pain in the ass to write, but definitely help clarify some things.
Steven, I got to tell you, if you don't sell this, it's because of you.
Yeah, it is. Totally.
It's a really good idea. It's got, to me, legs. Jim and I can go back and forth about which is the engine. Is it this or is it that? And when you got a choice, that's a great sign. It's harder because you got to pick one.
And it's a chance for really good writing, right? Like if you pull off the chemistry between these two characters and make it interesting, even in just the pilot, I think you're sold.
And if you can't, you should call your parents and say, I'm so sorry, you sent me to law school, and now that's 3 o'clock in the morning, pulling out the bourbon hour. Or as Jim and I call that Tuesday. But this is great, man. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, man. This is, wow, a lot of really, really interesting ideas.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
I mean, this has definitely got me jazzed up to write it. I'm so jazzed. I even used the word jazz. I'm stoked to, I guess, write this thing. And we'll definitely feel like a failure if I don't. So I'm gonna go do it.
Right on, man.
You're a writer in Hollywood. You're gonna feel like a failure every day.
Not every.
That's
day.
what we
Not
aspire
every day. Every day. Good luck, man.
Yeah.
It's great
good
to
luck,
talk
man.
to you.
Thanks, Sam and Jim. Really appreciate it, guys.
And that's all we've got for you this week. Our producer, J.R. Zamora-Thal, is working the mixing board.
Our logo was designed by Julien Debar-Monclair, and our music was provided by Bouderes out of Austin, Texas.
If you want to get in touch, we are at The Sam and Jim on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as The Writers' Room with Sam and Jim.
And if you like hanging out in the room with us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell a friend, would you, so we can get JR paid. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.